you for tuning in. This is Airway Circle Radio's Dear Momma Podcast, and I am your host, Dr. Catherine Murphy. To set today's stage, I'm going to share this quote from Albert Einstein with you. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Today's host, Ronda Holman, is the epitome of being able to explain difficult things in an easy and entertaining way. So, who is Ronda Holman? Because you're like, oh, I know the Airway champion on TikTok, but she has actually got so much more than just that. So yes, she's the Airway champion, and that's how I first met her. But she's also a 23-year US Airforce trained dental assistant who has spent her entire career looking at airway disorders and their negative effects on the mouth. She has dedicated the last 4 years to helping patients and strangers understand the negative effects of oral breathing on their oral health. Ronda not only has a passion to help people discover the root cause of so many non-communicable diseases, but she grew up with an undiagnosed airway disorder herself. After connecting the signs to the symptoms, it is her mission to help others learn to see the signs so they can advocate for themselves. Many people do not understand the biomechanics of breathing, nor do they understand the detrimental effects of overbreathing / mouth breathing that has on sleep quality. Ronda had extraction retraction orthodontics completed when she was 12 years old. She was diagnosed with an upper airway resistance syndrome, or UARS, when she was 37 years old. Ronda then made her choice to either live with struggling to breathe during sleep every single night and continue to watch her oral health decline, or make a change to improve her airway. She shares her passion every day to help people understand the difference between sleep quality and just sleep, and its relationship between airway health and breathing. Woo! So, this is just the tip of the iceberg, though, I have to tell you. So it's an incredible bio, but if you haven't checked her out, if you're on TikTok, check her out there, because that is where she has, I think it's daily, right, Rhonda?
Yeah, it is.
Daily videos.
Sometimes I get crazy and do 3 a day. Sometimes I'll take a day off. And I guess it all depends on how well my sleep was the night before.
Well, and you're sharing that with us too, because now you've got, which app are you using now?
So I use the Pillow. I really like the data. Eventually I'd like to upgrade to like a Halo ring or something,
Yes.
a smaller wearable, but I'm still on an Apple Watch.
Okay. Because I just saw that you posted that a couple weeks ago that you had really great REM sleep, because that was what your goal was, to get to more REM, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, before I started my airway journey, which is what I like to call it, because, it's not a pill. I can't get instant fixes. When you understand how it happened. I want to have more REM, because when I used to mouth breathe and snore and overbreathe, every time I would get to REM and all the muscles started to relax, that's when I typically started choking or coughing or snoring loudly, and that's when I'd come right back out of REM. So, everybody has milestones, and I have like several milestones that I want to reach on my journey. I've already fixed one, which is snoring. I no longer snore.
Woo!
I know. And I spend 5 out of 7. No, hang on. I spend 2 out of 7 nights prone now, typically. So my goal is to be a completely prone sleeper. And so stop snoring. I want to sleep on my back. I want to wake up every morning without an alarm, which I've done for the last year. I haven't woken up to an alarm, with the exception of like an early flight or some anomaly. But yeah, those were my 3 main goals: is to stop snoring, sleep on my back, and not wake up to an alarm.
That is phenomenal. Like, do you have a backup alarm just in case?
I do. Yeah. So in the Pillow app, it'll have, it's actually really smart technology. So the way they've got it set together is it will try to wake you up, at the best possible time, so that you release the cortisol. Like they use a little bit of science in there. So it's a subtle alarm, and it looks at your circadian rhythm. So that's kind of nice. So if I need it, it's there.
So you're not
And it's like
starting to go right into a dream state again and then have to wake up.
yeah,
That's
it'll
like
pull
such
you
a
out when
bummer.
you hit that rim. Yeah. And it's really like they just a subtle vibration on your Apple Watch, and then I have like birds that would chirp. But like again, I haven't woken up to an alarm in over a year. So yeah, I'm like I barely remember what that's like.
Okay,
Except for that one time it took place.
At this point, you probably have so many mamas out there though thinking, what? Do you just like have the smell of coffee going? So actually, there's so much for us to talk about, but that's probably something that you don't even need anymore, right? Coffee, caffeine.
Yes, it's been 6 months since my last coffee or
Wow.
caffeine. You know what? That's wrong because I did have like a mushroom elixir drink that had caffeine, natural caffeine in it.
Okay.
And then every now and then I'll have a green tea, but I'm super, super sensitive to it now. I guess because, everything's coming back online. I really don't like it.
Okay.
I don't.
So not
I don't
even like
it with
decaf
caffeine.
coffee?
No, I'll drink a dandelion tea or every now and then a black tea. Yeah, I don't. No decaf.
Wow. Now before, because this is how it is, listeners. Like I couldn't wait to talk to Rhonda, but I'm like, oh, and I will share with you. I already let her know that she can't get away with just one podcast with me because there is so much. Because I didn't even get to say that you have your own podcast, DA Rockstar Podcast, and then you also have that on Instagram as well. And then you're also explain the connection with Ignite as well.
So I'm one of the representatives for the dental assisting curriculum at Ignite University.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, it's been really exciting. I started a podcast and then Dr. David Rice and Kevin Henry, who, are the co-founders and founders of Ignite University, they said, you know what? Dental assistants get you and you're a dental assistant and you get them. Like, how can we help them learn to be better, chairside? I'm like, I'll just share what I've done. I'll share my struggles. I'll share my wins. And then I think my gift of gab and actually is the gift of being able to make complicated things simple. Because in my work, as a dental assistant, all of the education I had access to after school was geared towards dentist and hygienist. And that's fascinating. But it wasn't on my level of absorption. A lot of times it was above my pay grade as far as like understanding the information because I didn't have those foundational pieces of education. And so I was like, you know what? We got to make this easy to understand because that's how I learned. Tell, show, do. Tell, show, do.
Well, and thank you because when we met at the Chicago Midwinter and I realized that your course was sold out, which is phenomenal. And I started as a dental assistant. I started kind of being a dental assistant when I was 9. I was working with my dad, and that was in the days where you like would wipe off instruments. But like I was trained only by him. And then thankfully, when I started working more, his other dental assistants started to train me to do things because I was doing things a really tough, long way. And he's like, why is it taking you so long? I'm like, I'm doing it as you told me to. And then trying to understand what he was explaining to patients, I couldn't say it the same way as he did because I would just be repeating it. And I never got any real formal training, but you're right. Like that training needs to be out there, especially in this airway world where the things, like you said, are so complex that we're trying to explain to patients. And we know so often, I'll leave the room and then they're like, so, can you really just tell me what the doctor just said?
Yeah, we are the middleman. We're the communicators.
You're the connectors. You are really what makes it happen.
We really are. And it's my mission to let assistants see how valuable they are. So let's say you work for a doctor who doesn't act as if you're valuable. Maybe they don't want to relinquish any control or, understand how to not micromanage and how to give away like the ability for that person to say, here's the information, convey it as you see fit. I trust you. Trust is huge and it's really hard. So I think just empowering dental assistants to say, you know what? Not only does your dentist expect this from you. You should expect this from you. There's no reason to know what to do without knowing why you're doing it. If you don't know why you're doing it, we have got to go back.
And you brought up such a good point, because the moms, the parents, are going to spend more time mostly with you. In certain offices, they may spend more time with the hygienist if that's how the office is for certain aspects. But you're relatable. Most, I've been working in the dentistry field since I was 15, and most go into dental assisting because they love to help people, but they also love to talk.
Yep.
And really, that having that connection and having it's oftentimes built in time also for you to be the one that talks with the patient. I just love that you have taken this on and made it really explode, because then I imagine that the patients in the office that you're in, they come and they're like, oh no, we're here to see Ronda.
Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming. I'm not going to lie. I mean, we're at a stage in our career being an Airway Focused practice, where, I'm in the room with the patients and their moms, and, we're trying to explain these things, and they're like, why is there a trampoline in the waiting room? I'm like, you'll see, like understanding the fascial connection and breath control. And, I've got moms texting me, hey, I saw this video. What do I do about this? Or, make it make sense. I'm like, I'm on it. And, at this point, my dentist refers to me before she will answer a lot of the Airway Focused questions. I got Ronda for that, because here's the thing. I don't own a business. Mm-hmm. I am not in charge of managing 5 patients at one time. I get to spend my time when I'm not with patients focusing on the information. Like, I get to laser beam in on it so that she can delegate that to me, which, I mean, that's empowering, and that creates passion alone, is just knowing somebody's depending on you to have the answer. Ah!
Oh, that's awesome. That says a lot about her too. I mean, she's phenomenal. She was in my my course with Dr. Hang, and so we actually had a passing listeners, that me and Ronda, like, we didn't know it because the class was there was the lecture on Friday, and once you had your seat, you kind of had your seat, and I was kind of like how I was in dental school. I was in the front. And then we had a lunchtime, and I may have seen you more in the lunch than the passing. And then did you come to the Saturday event that was in his office?
Yep. Yeah. In the waiting room, it got really hot, and he's got the slideshow on the wall. And then, my doctor, she stepped up to the plate, and she was one of our lab rats.
Yes. And I was asking her questions all the time about her appliance and how that was going. So that says a lot, and reminds any of the doctors that are listening that trust should be passed on, because everyone in the office, to make it a successful practice, needs to know what's going on, needs to be invested, and then find the person that is as much like Ronda as possible that enjoys really connecting with people, because the responsibilities are properly distributed. So that being, a responsibility that also causes you to be more passionate is awesome. And then you just carry that over to strangers and across now the world. So tell me a little bit about how you went from, you already had your podcast at the time. Is that correct? And you already had, tell me if you already had your YouTube video, which is Airway Children Disorders. Is that correct?
Undiagnosed airway disorder, or undiagnosed childhood airway disorder. Yeah, that's it.
Undiagnosed childhood airway disorders. So we're gonna talk about that too. Well, let's just talk about that now, because I watched that and I'm like, oh, so much of that was me. And I would like to know a few things about that. One, just because I'm really very curious, because I feel like this is something that all of us, that then we find out about ourselves and we look back at the pictures. How was your family's response when you started going through all these childhood pictures, seeing different things about yourself that before you hadn't noticed, and then putting that up for display to the world on YouTube. How was that reaction?
So the first pushback, because people don't like change, and they're not always willing to accept new knowledge or to be they don't like the awareness of maybe having it wrong or not knowing what they didn't know. Like people are so egocentric. We've talked about this before. It's almost hard to unlearn and relearn. So then the first thing you hear is like causation versus correlation, Rhonda. And I'm like, okay, but if you really connected the dots, let's look at all the systems independently and then put them together. It all makes sense. And so, yeah, it was enlightening for me to go back. And I think it made me a better mom. I wish I had access to this information when my children were born. I didn't get it until my son was 5 and my daughter was 8. Or no, 8 or 9. And I didn't breastfeed. I didn't even give it a shot. I was like, yeah, whatever. I was like, I got a bottle. Like now I fundamentally understand the way the craniofacial respiratory system develops and how to get that forward growth by setting up, good habits. Everything, there's always going to be a little bit of mom guilt in there, because as soon as you learn a little more information, you look at like all of these fascial works and you're like, wow, I really should have taken my baby to get work. Like I saw the tension, not the torticollis. Like if I could go back in time, you can't go back in time. All you can do is learn from the past so that you do not repeat it. Right. And that the whole thing of history. Right. And I needed to share it. I had to show people like, this is how it goes under the radar because it's not all at once. It seems so disconnected. Especially when providers aren't interdisciplinary. I mean, this when my ENT didn't talk to my MD didn't talk to my DDS, my DDS didn't talk to my orthodontist. Like there was no connection, and the connection is the airway. Yeah. That is the tongue. It's the tongue. And someone needs to like say, I am like the air traffic controller for all things tongue. So it's I needed to help people help themselves and help their children.
I love that analogy because airway traffic controller, like literally airway traffic controller. I want you to make a pin that has like a little tongue coming out of it with wings. Oh, I think maybe you have another station or something that you can create, the airway traffic controller. And literally changing that, because then that would get people's attention. Like, no, not airway flying, like airway breathing, right? Biggest part of survival ever. And that actually connects to where like putting, going to airline, putting our own oxygen mask first.
Yes.
By recognizing ourselves, then we can be better parents.
Oh, it just, if you understand like psychology and mirroring, I think about this all the time. Like if my kids were to grow up, from the time I learned this knowledge, seeing me with my mouth popped open every time I'm on the phone or reading the paper or engaged in a conversation, what are they going to do? They're going to pick up that body habit. And as soon as that mouth pops open, that tongue falls down and you eventually breathe through the wrong hole, even if there's no congestion present, just because of body language. I mean, up until the age of 7, we're like little sponges. Yeah. And so, I'm really excited and fortunate. Like even with my children, I know there's a lot of moms listening to this. It is really hard. Once you learn how important oral rest posture is, to get someone else to have enough drive to develop a new posture or to even be conscious of their breathing, it's hard because I've already said this before. You can't want it for someone. Like they have to be ready to change because there is no one like shocking you every time your tongue falls down off your palate or you start sighing, for no reason because, you couldn't tie your shoe. But as a mom who's aware of it, I can, and you ask my kids, if I walk in a room and their lips are open, lips, that's our cue. Lips, tongue up, lips closed, breathing slow and silent through your nose. And it's funny because like the people in my life and my family that don't understand the consequences of like these small little dysfunctions, they're like, why do you make such a big deal because their mouth is open? I'm like, because it's important, but because it's not common knowledge and they didn't have access. It's a whole unlearning, relearning thing. You get criticized. So as a mom, learn the information, help yourself, then help them. And do not let anyone make you feel like you are harping on your children, that you are going to give them a complex, that you are spouting nonsense. It's not. It's important. And you keep doing you. Be that mom who stands up and says, I'm going to help my child find optimal function.
Because your children are going to follow something. They're going to do something anyway. Might as well have it be something healthy.
Right? Instead of like, we get Dairy Queen every Sunday, hey, we breathe through our nose when we're on our devices.
My mom goes in and goes every time. Well, I wanted to actually touch on how you shared with us, and thank you for doing this, that you had shared in your video that you were not breastfed and then you didn't breastfeed, because breastfeeding is so much of, well, what did your mom do? And, for different moms that may have come from someone they were raised by, not their biological mom, things like that. Well, then that's a really tough question. So much stuff comes from, well, what did the generation before you do? Instead of actually educating that breastfeeding, we are made for that. And I understand that not everyone can. But if we are taught of it being something not like just a handing down, because that was part of what caused my stress. My mom would be like, breastfeeding was easy, and you didn't have to clean bottles. You just put the baby on. And that's also in my head as I was learning things. Well, I can't be tongue-tied because I breastfed. My mom told me it was easy. Breastfeeding was easy for her and I should just breastfeed. And it leads to, no matter if the generation before did or didn't, it leads to these complexes that aren't fair to anyone. Like, we need to know where to get the help, when this is something that you can do, and when are the instances that you can't. Because there are, I understand that that's not something, I don't like saying you have to do any one thing, but to get this out of being something that is just a handed down, so we understand the importance, so we understand where to get the support. And to dismay the whole thought of, well, if they breastfed, they couldn't be tongue-tied. Because if we understand that the baby wants to be close, they will compensate. And then that's so many more compensations you have to unfold later. Because I compensated. I breastfed for, I think, 2 years, but I also sucked my thumb until I was 4. So
that's why we're each like snowflakes, and you have to go into this with an open mind, thinking what works for me may not work for you. With the symptoms that I had may not be the symptoms that you have, but I guarantee we can find a root cause to your compensations if we just dig a little deeper and peel back that medical history. Just there's always a way to come back to where the dysfunction started, what the catalyst was, because once you know why everything lined up the way it did, what your solutions are.
And that things shouldn't get to the point where, like in your instance, at 12 years old, when you went in and you had crooked teeth, that's the bit, like, there were so many opportunities from the pagiocephaly, from when you were born, to you had the earaches, you had all those things before you were 12, before the ultimate sign of really crowded teeth, really narrow vaulted palate. It should have been seen before. And then when it was seen at 12, the training now that we know really just gets to change, because the training was there, because you and I are about the same age. And I have books like right here, like right next to me here, because my father's been practicing for 50 some years. And the big names that are out there lecturing actually used to lecture about it, but then it didn't stick. But part of it is because we didn't have a way to get people all connected like you that have the gift of gab. And then you take these professionals that are now out and you show clips of them, and really engaging clips to get people to hear this message that are not like you gear this towards non-professionals so they can empower themselves, which is amazing. So what gave you that idea?
Well, for one, no one believed me when I told them mouth breathing was bad for their health. And I got tired of it because actually speech language pathologists, they were actually the driving force to me learning how to share content from other educators. Because
Really?
when I would try to convey the information that I learned, they would say, "You're not a speech language pathologist. You can't talk about swallow. You can't do this." Or, they would share my videos on Facebook and bash me. It was awful. I love you guys.
Oh,
SLPs, you're my heart now. But yeah, you guys give me a hard time. And I said,
of
okay, well,
course.
as a dental assistant, they keep talking about my scope of practice. So I am going to learn to utilize technology in a way that I can still convey the information, but it won't come through me anymore. So I did. I
Wow.
learned how to screen record and what it took to share information. I did it.
Well, way to keep up. Like, that's phenomenal. I'm sorry that that happened to you. And this happened how many years ago?
That was about 3 years ago
Okay.
when, yeah, the SLP community got mad at me.
But now it's all smoothed over.
Yeah, it's funny because now I've got people on TikTok. You should become an SLP. I'm like, I kind of want to be a jack of all trades. I
Hmm.
don't want to, I don't want to be siphoned in. That's why I won't become an orofacial myofunctional therapist because I want to see the big picture. I want to know a little bit about everything, and I want to know, what you can add to the recipe. What can you add to the recipe? But I want to still, I want to just be the glue, the I just want to be the
The
person.
connector.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
connector. I want to be the air traffic controller. Go here, go there. I don't want to know a lot about one thing. I want to know a lot about everything.
Isn't that the hard part too? Because then since there is so much to learn, like once you realize that you'd spent well, you were 37 when you were diagnosed with UARS, and you had spent all these years up until then seeking answers here, and now you're like, I can spend the next, I don't know, but however many years, 58, 30, 60, however many years more, now learning all these other things. And then once you learn about something, you're like, I want to learn more about that. And then that takes you, because I just attended a course about instead of just cranial sacral therapy, cranial fascial therapy. I'm like, yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. And mixing that with Reiki and mixing it with acupuncture.
Well, I mean, when you understand the fundamental issues behind dysfunction, especially when it comes to airway disorders, you realize that it wasn't one thing that caused dysfunction.
Hmm.
It's never one thing. It could be the pacifier, it could be the tongue tie, it could be the car seat, it could have been the processed foods, it could have been living in four walls when I was supposed to be outside and developing allergies. And it was all of them, a
Yeah.
little bit of everything. And I have patients, that go through our airway protocol and they're like, I wish I could say it was from the lip tape. And I'm like, you can't, because we hit this from every aspect. I start getting you doing functional movements. I start getting you doing breath work exercises. I start getting you on myofunctional therapy. Like, it's never one thing. So you're never going to look back in a month, 2 months, whatever we do your next sleep report. You're never going to say it was just the lip tape, because the minute you put that tape on your lips and you start to get restorative sleep, you have a higher cognitive performance.
Hmm.
Every time you sleep, you heal a little bit more. You wash your brain a little bit more than you ever have, and then you consume more information. Then, this guy makes all the choices, right? This is the thing. Like, as soon as this starts to get healthier, you can learn more information and actually implement it into your life. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it seems complicated, but it's really not, because everything happens here. Like the neuroplasticity, like if you understand how that whole thing works, you can learn anything and you can implement it. It was funny because, as the poor sleep, as you get
Yeah.
older,
Hmm.
the sleep quality, it just declines as you start to lose muscle tone. And I remember listening. I remember where I was driving. I was in Boise, Idaho, in a car, and I was listening to NPR, and they had an article on about berries and cognitive decline. And I
Oh,
remember they were talking about, women over the age of 40 should eat more berries and nuts and seeds, to help improve, I remember hearing that. Did I start eating blueberries that day? No. Did I start eating nuts and seeds and berries within a year? No. The only time that those pathways truly connected was after I started addressing my airway health. Then I was able to, I had the knowledge. A lot of us know the stuff, eat the rainbow, eat the seasonal fruits, and vegetables, like
exercise.
Yeah. Don't watch your phone in bed. But like all of these things, you can't in the sugar cravings, like you can't commit to any of this, until you start getting that restorative reparative sleep, because the data you may have is not implementable for a lot of us.
Well, and the community too.
Yeah.
And I think
support,
that's what it seems like for most people that I've met that are now in the airway or holistic health journey. They went through that time of being kind of pushed away by the people that knew them for so long. Like, no, I don't know what you're doing, and I don't want to hear that. And we all went through that period of, I'm alone. I'm the only person that has ever gone through this. And then we pushed through that. Probably because then we finally got better sleep. We got to also be tuned into our intuition. Like, no, I can't be the only person. There's lots of people out there with their mouth open now. I can see them. And their crooked teeth, their recessed both jaws. And then we push in and we get into this community. And then that's where we get to thrive. But getting people to be okay with not doing what their community is, since we are very tribal, to be okay with saying, you can do that, whatever serves you, but I need to do this. And I'm going to go step here by myself and hope that I find friends. And then I've made some of the most incredible friends by stepping away, but it's hard. And it's hard for moms too, if your support groups are supporting you one way or another way, to say, no, this is what works for me, especially as a brand new mom or a mom of a new baby that has needs that are very different from your previous baby. And you're like, but this baby, it worked. And I think that's where what you're helping with. So thank you again. You're helping people. I read those comments of like, oh my gosh, I was wondering, they feel connected and building that community. So you're helping these people that don't necessarily have professional aspect that we get to share. You get to go to an office with a doctor that really ignites and excites your passion by trusting you and sharing this life-changing information. And not all of us then have that. Like at the time when I was a new mom, I didn't have that. I was alone for 6 weeks. I felt like, what am I supposed to do? Nobody else is out there experiencing this. But now you're reaching those people that might be flipping through, like, what the heck am I going to do? So I just wanted to say thank you again and pass this on to people that are we all talk about planting seeds, but one of the best ways to plant a seed is to make it entertaining.
Yeah. I like to learn off of visuals. I think that would be something, now that I have better cognitive performance, it's fascinating. Within a month, of just lip taping, and that was before I even started Buteyko breathing exercises. It was before I really committed to orofacial myofunctional therapy, just breathing through the right hole. Like I was able to everybody's like, oh, I don't know how to use this thing. I'm like, I do. Like it all the little cylinders started firing together and everything's so much easier. And when things are easier, there's so much less stress in your life. Oh, yeah. Every single recovering mouth breather I've ever met was just like me, running like 1,000,000 miles a minute. You would get so sidetracked so fast, and you could get really anxious and frustrated and all of these things. Like that goes away. Like that was just another symptom, you guys. Like, yeah, this stuff is easy. That should be anybody's goal. If you just want to make the hard stuff easy, focus on your airway health. If that's all you want to do, it's rewarding in itself. Some people don't want to do all the work. They don't want to do the myofunctional therapy. They don't want to, improve their CO2 tolerance. Good for them. They don't want to do the fascia work. But, if all they do is make sure that they breathe through the right hole during sleep, their life will improve. And I think there is a place for everyone. And that was the whole reason I really committed to developing my craniofacial respiratory structure, like holistically. I wanted to be there because I had patients that had, kind of the same situation, missing 4 teeth, had retractive orthodontics. They thought that there was no hope for them if they didn't have $5,000 or $6,000 to shell out for a growth appliance or, to some type of surgery. So I wanted to prove that I had access, we're ALF providers. I had access to the appliances. I had access to anything I wanted or needed, financially and time. But I wanted to see what the actual possibilities were to growing the face naturally with using tongue and lip posture. And I do active wear the habit corrector. So there are limits to how much growth, especially at 40 years old when I committed to it. But I mean, younger, it would have been a lot different. But I wanted to show people, like, even if you don't have the means, I hate for people to become their diagnosis. Like, you have obstructive sleep apnea. This is your CPAP. That's all you get. I'm like, no, what about an oral advancement appliance? Oh, yeah, you get those too. I'm like, what about actually addressing the overbreathing so that they don't suck in all those tissues? Yeah. What about getting the tongue stronger so it actually holds your soft palate up? Like, what about reducing the inflammatory food so, there's less inflammation in, this region here? Yeah, it is, it's all about education, layered learning.
Layered learning, making the hard things simple, focusing on breathing. It's like we talked about, it all goes back to how you breathe, sleep, and eat. And we are in control of so much more than what people want us to think, right? Are there any last words before we go on to the take 3 for me portion?
Yeah, just intuition, like Dr. Murphy's saying, you guys, if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Does it take a little time to figure it out? Yes. Can you always rely on someone else to figure it out? No. You have to do the deep dive and you have to start connecting dots on your own because no one knows your health better than you do. And as a parent, as a mom specifically, if you find, like Dr. Murphy said before, if you think something is off, dig and dig and dig because your intuition, you need to listen to it again. Somewhere along the way, we gave her power away. And there are many medical providers that are amazing. They are great at what they do and they have changed people's lives, but you don't know where to look unless you know where the problem stems from. And so that, I guess my takeaway is listen to your intuition. That gut is telling you something. Even if it's the only person you control is yourself. And once you start healing yourself, then branch out. People will gravitate towards that. Wow, you look so much healthier. Wow, you look rested. Like, yeah, turns out I was breathing through the wrong hole and I had a floppy tongue that was choking me all night. So who knew? Who knew?
I just love the terms that you use. I had a floppy tongue. Like, that's so relatable. People are like, yeah, I get floppy. Rather than, sometimes we use terms that are just non-relatable and we don't make it simple. So thank you. And can I share a little bit of what you shared with me before we actually started the podcast about your practitioners? So when I was talking with Ronda, I just love how vulnerable you can be. And you just put yourself out there every day. You just do it. And I love that you shared that now you're very particular about the practitioner that you want to go to. You want to go to the one that has gone through the struggle that they are then going to help you with. And it's such a good reminder for those that, we want to help so many people, but sometimes we forget that, whether or not your provider or your mom, like, especially as a mom, we want to help. A lot of the times that we hear that advice that we're like, oh, I don't want to hear it, but you get it. The mom is sharing it because she really wants to help. But we really should be looking at those moms that have gone through similar things and listening to their help. Like when my mom, love her, but when she's like, breastfeeding shouldn't be that hard. And it was hard for me. I should have gone somewhere else to look. And that was my choice. I should go to someone else who had a rough breastfeeding journey. So I appreciated that insight and just that refocus of the more vulnerable and open we are, the more we can help, and seeking help from those that have gone through that same journey. So thank you.
Yeah, it's totally different reading it from a textbook versus living it. And that experience is invaluable. And the amount of advice that you can get from those people, I want to be that person for others.
Mm-hmm.
So heal yourself and then help others heal.
That's awesome. And speaking of healing, the take 3 for me that I've co-created with Bree is really so that each day we know that in a simple 3 minutes, that we could all find 3 minutes. We can either stop our social media, we can find 3 minutes to heal ourselves in order to be better for ourselves and others. So the take 3 for me, the 3 parts are, number 1 is gentle movement. So for those that can kind of stand up, please do so. For us, I'm going to kind of just move around in my chair a little bit. You'll hear a little noise. Get connected, because we've been just listening with our brains for so long. We want to get connected with our body. We do a lot of face yoga and things like that. So you can even just put up your arms. That feels really good. It's nice and simple, something we don't do very much every day. Breathe in. And then you can relax. The second portion is our mindset reset, and Ronda has volunteered to share with us. So the 3 parts are what you're grateful for, what you're proud of yourself for, and what your intention is for the day. So go ahead.
I am grateful for knowledge and access to knowledge. I get to live in a world, and so do you, where experts are sharing it on free internet platforms.
Yes, that's phenomenal.
I get to live in a world where I can afford books. My computer right now is sitting on a stack of like 12 books. I live in a world that has, and here's another takeaway too, guys. Let's say you don't have the financial means to buy these courses or buy these books. These people, the true experts, are going to be so passionate and so full of knowledge, it will flow over and you will find it for free. Let's take James Nestor, for instance. This man wrote a book. Of course, I was like one of the first people to buy the books, and we're Facebook friends. That's my famed claim, is I'm friends with James Nestor. But had I waited a little bit longer, would have had access to almost all the information inside that book by YouTube videos and interviews and podcasts. So be patient. Those experts cannot contain that information. Even if they say, I wrote a book, buy it, eventually you will, if you don't want to pay for it, you can have access to the information for free. That's something I've learned. And I am grateful for having passions for this. Like, I am grateful that I wake up every morning and I want to help people not be the person I was 4 years ago, not struggling to, like, I got to the point where I hated sleep. It wasn't restful. I'd rather sit up and play on my phone or watch Netflix. I'd rather read a book. I remember one weekend where I spent 3 days reading like an entire 4-book series. I didn't sleep but maybe 2 hours, but I didn't care because sleep was never good for me. Like, it was never restorative or reparative. I'm like, it's a waste of time. But now I realize that all my systems are starting to heal because I'm actually getting restorative, reparative sleep. So I'm really grateful. And then my intention for today, and it's the same intention I have every day. What choices can I make today to have better sleep tonight? Every choice I make with, I look at it subjectively, objectively. If I have this piece of food, will it help my sleep or hurt my sleep? If I do this activity, will it help my sleep or hurt my sleep? If I interact with this toxic person, will it help my sleep or hurt my sleep? If I choose to do or not to do something, will it, every choice I make is predicated on how will it affect my sleep quality tonight. And I make such better choices because I finally put something like a tangible thing as a goal, and it's flexible and it changes. And it's just, I don't know. I like living by my sleep. For
And
my
that,
sleep.
I love that intention. What a simple way to rethink things once you know what good sleep is, because that's an excellent point, that if you don't know what good sleep is, then it can be viewed as a waste of time because you
Yep.
don't feel any better when you wake up. I mean, I remember feeling that too, like, well, I can just, study, like I can just study all night because I don't feel any better when I do get
Right?
sleep. So that's an excellent point. And then once you get to that point, to make that your intention.
Yes. Oh, because it's like, all the people that have big goals, that do big things in life, they want to climb Mount Everest, or they want to write a book, or, they want to get the best score at whatever, you can insert whatever you want there. But it's people that live with a passion that always have a consistent goal. And I was that perpetual, like, short-term goaler, whether it was like, I want to fit into this dress, or there's a graduation coming up, or it was always short-term goals. It was never like something that would literally help me have a higher quality of life for the rest of my life. I would love to be a centenarian, but I'm okay if I'm not. I just don't want to die of a non-communicable disease that could have been prevented had I had like it's all up here. Like, this determines everything downstream. Put this at the forefront of your life and your life changes. And the only way to truly give this what it needs is between the nutrition, the breathwork exercises, and actually getting restorative reparative sleep. This is who determines how long you live and what quality of life you'll have.
Wow. I I look forward to our next podcast together, because we could have gone on and on. But I really do try to make these shorter so people can listen to them on their commute. And so I love that you really are the epitome of this quotation. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. You understand this so well that you make it entertaining. People are just flocking to you. So thank you for having such an impact on the world. Thank you for taking this time out of your schedule to talk with all of us. And stay tuned for the next episode. There will be a surprise guest. And until then, enjoy those little moments that are only found through motherhood. Thank you so much, Rhonda.